Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about navigating the twists and turns of life and embracing the imperfections of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches Catherine and Kirsty, and our mission is to support you in finding your own path, your own way, with greater clarity and self trust, no matter how messy or uncertain things may seem.
We address the roadblocks that come up time and time again for our coaching clients, from acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
As well as asking lots of questions, a coach's favourite thing to do, we'll be sharing thoughts and insights and offering plenty of tips, tools, and techniques for you to try.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves. Hello and welcome to Mission Imperfect. Now, as you know, we do love to share some practical tips with you, and this is going to be one of our bite-sized episode on tips, tools, and techniques. And this one is Catherine's idea, so take it away, Catherine.
Okay, thank you. Well, yes, it's that time of year, isn't it, January, when we're encouraged to set some goals, but sometimes we need to maybe go backwards a step before we can start going forwards. Where do we even want to be setting goals in our life? What's actually going on anyway? Almost like the grounding from which to set those goals from. So this exercise is called the Wheel of Life. You may have heard of it, but we're gonna go through it today so you can have a go if you've not done one before. If you have done one, by all means, give it another go. You might be surprised what comes up. You might want to put different things in it. And we've even got a couple of variations that we'll talk about a bit later on. So let's
Is
start by saying,
I just want to add that what you said about if you've done it before, I think it's a good thing to do at any time because life is always changing around you. So
yeah,
this is not a one-off thing. This is something you can come back to again and again.
yeah, see, like most things we say, really, isn't it? Like we've spoken about values before. That's something to revisit.
Mm.
But yeah, this is a really practical thing to do, and I think it gives you that lovely visual snapshot of your current reality. That's what's really nice. It's like a nice visual summary in your eyes of your current reality of different areas of your life. So it's popular, but it's not just about producing a wheel, going, there you go, done it, tick the box. It's what you do with it that matters. And we will talk through that today so you can give it a try. In the show notes, we'll put a link to a blog so you can actually read through it step by step, because obviously we're just going to talk through it today and you'll be able to see an example so you kind of know what it is what we're talking about. So in a nutshell, it gives you some perspective, context, and will highlight some things for your attention before you can then perhaps go on to make any decisions or goals, or if you're someone who likes New Year's resolutions or not. It just gives you quite a helpful starting point. So let's crack on. How do we actually produce one? So you can easily find some templates online. If you put Wheel of Life into a search engine, you will probably see a blank template
Yeah.
come up. There'll be one in the blog in the show notes, or you can draw your own. So there's plenty of places from which to start. The thing that you want to try to probably get a handle on before you sort of crack on drawing your wheel is you're going to have segments on this wheel. Think about sort of like slices of cake, because we like talking about food, don't we, Kirsty? So when you think about slices of
Especially
cake,
cake and biscuits, yes.
exactly, cake and biscuits,
But
yeah. But I'm
you don't
afraid,
have a slice of a biscuit though. That would
well,
be
no,
wrong.
that's the
So we're going
thing.
with cake
Had
today.
had to go
Yes.
for cake today, yeah. So if you think of those as like a segment, a slice, they represent sort of category that you're going to put on your wheel. So you'll want a sense of how many categories you want, because then each of those will become a segment on the wheel. So the categories are things that are important to you at this stage of your life. And typically, I don't know if you agree, Kirsty, anywhere between about 6 and 10 seems to be quite a typical example for a wheel of life. I don't think I've seen many with more than that or many with less than about six. Well, do you agree?
No, I think that's about right. In fact, I would say eight is probably about average because that's the easiest one to draw.
It is, yes, I know. Yeah, nice, nice. It's almost like cutting an actual cake, 8 pieces, job done.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
but just to
but
give,
okay, just to say, when I hear somebody say about drawing a wheel, my first thought is, but I can't draw a circle. So just to manage expectations, you don't have to be able to draw a circle. In fact, it's very unlikely that your wheel will look like a wheel. So don't worry about your
yes,
drawing skills.
yeah, to be honest, by the time you finish, the fact is it's not perhaps a perfect circle will be the least of your concerns because there's far more interesting things to look at.
That's
Yeah, so
kind of
don't
the
worry about
point,
that.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, you can easily find a template. But just to give you a sense of what are the sorts of things you might be wanting
Mm.
to put in your wheel. So these are just some suggestions. Feel free to obviously use any that you think are suitable for you. Leave ones out that you don't feel are relevant, but they might be things like work or career satisfaction. You might have something about physical health, about your family and home life, friendships, personal development, maybe something about sort of mental or spiritual well-being, financial security, maybe something to do with community and belonging, love and intimacy, and leisure and recreation. They were the ones that I kind of brainstormed. I think
Yeah.
that might be about 10. Yeah, that's 10. But it's not, those were just a combination that you can draw upon. And there are no rules over what you should and shouldn't include. So just choose whatever feels right.
No
And then
rules.
however
It's
many,
complete anarchy in this wheel that isn't a wheel.
yeah, exactly. But once you've chosen them, you might be annoyed if you realize you've chosen nine because you want a nine segmented wheel. But funny enough, I think that is actually the number that's on the example one that I've got in the blog.
Oh,
So there will be
okay.
one that you can use. So yeah, you'll use the wheel cut into these sort of segments, and each one of those will be corresponding. So you can just label them around the outside with your chosen categories that we've just mentioned. And the final preparation step is to sort of mark rings on your wheel from right in the middle towards the outer edge. And you want 10 all together. So if you think about like rings on a tree stump, is the best way I can think to explain
Mm.
it. So for that inner ring, that's your low value, that's only going to be a 1. And right on the outer edge, that's going to be your marker of 10. And the inner ring of 1, that represents high dissatisfaction. And obviously, number 10 on the outer edge is totally satisfied. So I appreciate all this drawing. I mean, mine would look like nothing on earth if I tried to do this freehand. I don't know about you, Kirsty,
Mine would
but
be a very wonky wheel. We would not be going anywhere on that wheel.
no, no, and that's before we've done the marking off part.
Exactly,
So
yes. That
as you quite
might
rightly said,
symbolize
Kirsty,
something.
yes, if that feels too daunting, drawing all of these rings and making it look symmetrical before you start, you can just use little markers, almost like if you think of each of the slices being like a spoke, you can sort of put a little marker on it to represent number 1 near the middle and number 10 on the outside. But to be honest, after all this, we're very imperfect. It doesn't really matter what it looks like as long as you've got something that you can work with, because it's the next part that starts to give you some information.
Yeah.
So you'll work your way around your wheel, segment by segment, marking off your satisfaction level with that life area at the corresponding number. So a ring near the center, as I've said, means lower satisfaction, one at the outer edge, higher satisfaction. So, for example, you might have your leisure and recreation that's scoring maybe a 3, but you might have something like your friendships marking it an 8 or something. So don't feel like you have to follow a certain pattern. You're just going to mark each segment on its own merit, and then
Yeah.
you've completed your wheel of life.
And I think when you're assessing how satisfied you are, I mean, we've said this on a number of topics prior, I think you don't have to justify, you don't have to explain to anybody else
Yeah,
why you've picked a number. The number that pops into your head as, when you first ask yourself the question, how satisfied am I with this on a scale of 1 to 10? The number that pops into your head is the right number. Just go with
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And
I totally
it,
agree.
it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to mean that you are where you want to be if everything was perfect. It can mean, given the way things are at the moment, I think I am as satisfied as I reasonably can be, which is slightly different to this is exactly how I want it to be ideally.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
So,
try to be really honest as well. So don't feel like, oh, I wish this was higher, so I'll sneakily mark it a little bit higher because
I feel it
that's
should be higher. Yeah. None of
exactly,
that.
exactly. Because remember, it's only
Ditch
for
the
you.
shoulds.
You don't have to share it with anyone. It's just for you. So you've got a completed wheel, and I don't think anyone ever has a beautifully symmetrical um, wheel marked off at like eights the whole way round. I don't think that's ever happened with anyone I've ever done this exercise with. You're very likely to have a wonky wheel, which is probably a fair reflection of life. Let's be honest. Life
Yeah,
is
I
pretty much
think
a
so.
wonky
Yeah.
wheel. Um, but just have a little look at it because that's probably going to give you your first bit of information. What does it just look like from a very first impression? Is it very small? So have you got an awful lot that's concentrated near the middle rings?
Mm.
Is it actually very large? Is it really lopsided? Is it all over the place? You'll get some insights just from that first look.
Yeah. And how do you feel about what you're seeing? Is
Yeah.
there something that comes up straight away? Because probably subconsciously you'll be understanding and processing what you're seeing a little more quickly than you are consciously. I think it's if everything is really low, if you have a tiny little circle in the middle, that is probably indicative of a certain level of depression going on or something similar. And I have to say that that's probably beyond a coaching issue, and that might be more about actually considering seeking some mental health support.
Yeah. This is what I'm saying. First, your first impression will give you some
Mm.
almost instant information, some instant feedback on how you are feeling about your life. Because remember, you've chosen the categories that you think are important and you've marked off your current levels of satisfaction. So it's just giving you an immediate snapshot. And like I said, most people are going to have a really marvelously wonky wheel, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But let's delve in a little bit deeper because, as
Yeah.
we said, doing it is one thing, it's what you do with it that kind of really counts. So you've
Mhm.
had your initial look at it, it's probably given you a bit of immediate feedback. But now having a closer look. Is there a pattern or a trend with some of the things that are scoring more low than certainly you would like them to be? Perhaps are you surprised by any of them? Even though this is an exercise in honesty and it shouldn't necessarily be a surprise, it's just we don't often necessarily consider these things, do we? Like marking them. This is just giving, yes, it's not massively scientific, a scale from 1 to 10, but again, it's going to be telling you something. Are there segments you're drawn to because they matter the most, or because of them being a low score and you really wish that they were higher than they are? And what I would suggest you might want to try to do is focus on two or three important segments.
Yeah.
And can you just identify honestly with yourself why they are at the score you have given them? Like if you've only given them a 3, for example, what's the reasons behind that? And if it's a high score, what would you need to do to keep it there? Or maybe what would be, no matter where it is, what would be a +1 decision to get it just that little, to boost it a little bit more? Because again, if something's at a 3, you may not necessarily be able to leap straight to a 9. But you
That's
might
a
think,
big leap.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big leap. But there might be something that would make it a 4. And then maybe the next time it might make it a 5, and so on. As we've
Yeah.
always said, things don't have to be done in great big leaps. I think you'll find most people I find, I don't feel the same, Kirsty, are drawn to a couple of segments, ones that they feel most strongly about, and more often than not, because they are perhaps lower than they really want them to be.
Yes, and I suspect there might be a link to values and things going on here about what you
Mm,
find that you're drawn to looking at more closely. And in looking at that, at why you think things are sort of where they are, depending on, how you tend to think, it may be that you look at what you need to make it higher rather than looking at an explanation of why it's low. I mean, both can be useful ways of looking at it,
mm,
and probably a combination of both is the most helpful. But it doesn't matter which way you focus, as long as you are, starting to think about it and being honest with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not about beating yourself up because
No.
sometimes a low score is going to be relevant for what's going on right now. You know, there could be circumstances that will contribute towards a current score. You know, life situations will happen and they will affect your wheel. That is natural. But you can maybe explain, you know, you can rationalize that to yourself and again still potentially think of that +1
Yeah.
move rather than thinking, how do I leap up? Because this is so depressing to go from like a 3 to a 9.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, is it? I mean, there are times in life, as you just said, times in life and circumstances that some aspects of life just are not going to be where you ideally would like them to be. I mean, anyone who's ever had a new baby on the hands will know that kind of the rest and leisure and hobbies sort of section of
Yeah.
their wheel of life is going to look disastrous for quite some time. But that's kind of natural. Yeah, there will be little things you can do to improve that. But the chances of getting it to where you would ideally like it to be, all things being equal, are pretty slim for about 18 years. Spoiler alert. But,
Yes.
um, but if you've got, for instance, if there's something big happening at work, then the way you feel about work may be very different for the time that's going on than it will be outside of that time. So sometimes it's about saying, you know what, that score is actually pretty shitty now, but that's not surprising given what's going on. And once that settles, I'm going to do this again and I think it will be better. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. What's going on in the rest of the wheel?
Yeah. And you might have a situation that's impacting more than one segment. And that can
Mm,
actually be in some ways a bit reassuring because you think, actually, I know that this one thing is impacting more than one of my segments, but this will be something that I can either improve or change over time. That's going to alter. So you don't have to be total. We certainly don't want anyone to be deflated by looking at their wheel. It's as in most of the things we suggest, they are exercises in honesty and self-awareness, because then it's like, what can we do with this knowledge that we now have? Because maybe we it's not that we didn't necessarily have it before, but we perhaps weren't seeing it in this way where we can actually take some information
yeah.
and do something with it. So, I mean, there are quite a lot of questions you can use to take your wheel of life further, and you can do different wheels. So, as I mentioned at the start, you might have come across this wheel of life concept before, but you can do different wheels in more depth. So, for example, you could do a work wheel of life or career wheel of life and analyze different aspects of it. So, it could be relationships with your colleagues, with managers, the culture. You know, you could populate a wheel that's purely about work. Or we could
Oh,
do a wheel of well-being and consider aspects in more detail there. So you could almost take each of those segments we mentioned before and break those down into sort of sub wheels. You could have a whole collection of lovely wonky wheels. But we're just saying basically there are different options for doing this exercise, but there's something about that quite neat. Well, it depends how neat your wheel is. You've drawn it, but there's something about that visual representation that can be quite handy to use as a starting point for questions, possibly for coaching. This is something that both Kirsty and I do. And if you'd like support interpreting your wheel, even doing your wheel, setting your intentions for the year, then do consider getting in touch. All our details will be in the show notes.
yeah. And focusing on the questions that you can ask yourself around this and the way you can use this constructively to move forward in your life in the ways that you want to. Yeah, having a coach support you in that makes a real difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will end with a quick question, as we like to do, because hopefully this has planted a seed of thought. I haven't actually done one of these. I might give
Mm.
it a go. Just from what we've said about it, or even if you have done one before, is there I'm going to call it a life segment, because I think you now know what I mean, that you know you wouldn't be scoring as highly as you'd like? And can you think of a small next step, i.e., +1, what would move it up from the current level to one more to improve it? So even if you don't complete the wheel, perhaps you can just take that one thing away to think, I could potentially just do this one small thing to boost one of those important life segments for me. So that's everything I think we've got to say this week on the Wheel of Life for this bite size tools, tips, techniques. Did I get that in the right order? I don't know. I think we've changed it every time. But
What it's
yeah,
three T's, it doesn't matter.
yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's the technique always seems to go last. It's the other two come a bit random. So there we have it. That's it for this week on the Wheel of Life. If you do have a go at one and you would like to just let us know how you got on with it again, please do get in touch. All of our information and details will be in the show notes, and we will see you again soon for another episode. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect. We'd love to hear your thoughts on any of our episodes, especially if you've had a light bulb moment in answering one of the questions, have benefited from one of the tips, or have a suggestion for an episode topic.
And if these conversations have made you curious about how coaching could help you, please don't hesitate to get in touch with one or both of us to find out more about what we offer. Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.